and welcome to the Imagination Factory. I'm Sarah,
I'm Keith.
and today we are moving into our next stage of creating the Door comic book. So we just finished our refined thumbnails, and now we're going back to page one again to start to make things a little bit more concrete. We're actually getting closer and closer to the finished art now.
Yeah, so in the process, if I were to label this anything, I would say this is like the rough pencil stage. Um, because I'm doing this a little differently than, let's say, if I were to be doing this by myself, I wouldn't necessarily, I may actually go into my thumbnails and refine them even more, but that's more of a preference thing. I don't think it really matters too much whether or not as long as in the thumbnail stage, you've figured out, like, let's say 90% of all of the things you need to know about the blocking, like, where the light's coming from, how the character's moving around, maybe, giving ideas of light and dark, like shadow and light, things like that. Making sure you've got like the pacing of the story and you've made room generally for where the word balloons are going to be. Uh, the thumbnails are not for fine detail. They're not for getting things perfectly right when it comes to perspective. They're not for like working so refined that you're precious about it, right? It's still okay to be loose. It's still okay that some of it hasn't been figured out, but you want to get some of the big things taken care of, as I mentioned, like generally the perspective, generally the composition, generally the lighting, generally the anatomy, all that kind of stuff. And then in the rough stage is where you get to actually make sure that um like you can actually start to put in some of the detail. You can actually see, like the emotional like state of the person in a much more nuanced way. Um, I'd also say at this stage, um, your uh it's your choice as to like whether this is going to be a more rough pencil or more fine pencil. It's all very much like up to, or maybe you go right into inks. Like I wouldn't tell somebody not to do that if they feel pretty comfortable or confident with the thumbnails they've created. The only thing to keep in mind is if you've started at something small, and then when you blow it up large, it's going to, any of the little mistakes are going to be much more
Mm.
pronounced, but then generally you may shrink it back down again. So it's a weird kind of, it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of trial and error, to go, okay, well, now I've blown something up bigger than the actual print size. So, keep in mind that like from that point line width, or the how much you can see that the pencil is coming forward or in the midground or the background, like how thick, thin the pencil line is, it is going to get shrunk down a bit, right? So these are all things that just take practice. One other thing I'm going to say before I start getting into this, because there's a lot that we can start to talk about with this, and I'm going to let Sarah actually go over the page breakdown one more
Mhm.
time. But I just want to make mention of this, and this is something that I struggle with as well. So you're gonna create something in those thumbnails that may kind of like just be magical. Like you're like, oh my God, like we've already had kind of debates about this a little bit. Like there's just something that you're like, oh my God, this is like there's just something about it I really like, and then you're gonna try to recreate it, and you may find that in doing so, something that it just kind of becomes like the light gets lost a bit, the magic of it dims. Um, I don't have a clean answer for you because, as I said, I struggle. One of the things and we'll see this throughout the process probably, is I may start to structure something, go through like making sure the anatomy is right, and then I'll look at it and go, wow, that looks really stiff. And then have to go redo it again because it's like something gets lost. And I may try to keep, at that point, you may go, well, maybe it's better to actually have things that aren't quite accurate and anatomically,
Mhm.
but They're just something about, like, the legs are a little bit longer, but because it works, then you might as well keep it, right? Or, the way that the body is moving isn't quite possible, but you can't, like, it just feels right, right? So, if it feels right versus if it's technically right, I always go with feels right more than technically, right?
No, and that makes sense. I mean, this is a very organic process, of course, right? And just because we've gone over these thumbnails a few times and refined them doesn't mean things are still not going to change. I think also another thing that's always important to keep in mind is we've looked at this again and again and again in many different ways. The audience, when they read it, will see it for the first time. So sometimes, as somebody who's writing something or creating something, you yourself start to get bored and be like, is this good enough? Should I start changing it? It's probably actually really good. It's just you've seen it so many times that you start to look for things that you should update when maybe it's actually working really well. And that's always a tough thing when you're doing multiple versions and edits of something. I struggle with as a writer as well. You read it again, you're like, oh, should I keep changing it? It's like, no. I've just gotten bored of it because I know it so well. So that's something as we keep going through stages to remind ourselves of.
It's a good
All
point.
right. So I am going to read through panel breakdown information, but I'm not going to read through sort of the way I've done it in the past. I'm going to read through more the notes that Keith has made about each panel because I think that's the more helpful thing to hear at this point as we're starting to get into this level of detail. Okay, so for page one, panel one, this is our establishing shot. So establishing a down shot of the room. Show where the window is, that will shine a light on the door. If we can see through the window, we can see a street light. Probably over the kitchen counter sink, that's an L shape from the entry door. Kitty corner is the fridge with a pantry door on the same wall as the mystery door, and it's open. Maybe it's a folding door. The door itself is on the opposite side of the entry door, not quite parallel to it. The door opposite the window is the bedroom door, and the door immediately next to that is the bathroom, both of them open and visible. Between the bathroom door and bedroom door, that both open in, is another closet that has a folding door. All around the room are boxes, a beanbag chair, a small dinner tray, and that's it. A TV is against the wall next to the door entrance. So those were our notes about panel one, which is our big establishing shot of the room. And this panel also has no dialogue in it at all.
Mhm. Can I just jump in real quickly?
Absolutely, please do.
Um, so if you're watching what I'm doing now, I'm laying out the framing of it, the actual panel lines. Um, I find that, when I see this, it kind of gives me a good idea of like how it's going to pace, um, throughout the page. You can also see, I've got these blue lines here. So those blue lines are there to show me where the edge of the paper is, and then let's actually start. I'll start to number them right here in the corner. You can see if I zoom in a little bit there. So you got that like the blue right on the edge of the paper, and then I numbered, put a little one there, and then you've got another blue line, so it's kind of like wedged in the middle. That's your trim line. At this size, it's much thicker than the actual trim line is going to be. So when it shrinks down, that trim line is going to be like more like a 0.125, I believe, is the trim line. I'm not sure what this is like more like a 0.25. It's like a quarter of an inch. So it'll shrink down a bit to like almost like half that state. Uh, but you always want to make sure you have a trim line. And the reason why is you're not necessarily going to know. Uh, it depends on like the paper cutting, but generally speaking, when they cut paper for printing, it's not always sliced like cleanly, like perpendicular, vertically straight. Sometimes there's a bit of a skew to it. It could cut slightly, and so you want to make sure that there's nothing of importance in that trim line, no like half faces or anything like fingers or hand, anything like that's a focal point where your eye is going to go to, which is generally hands and fingers and things like that. So in that area, when I'll just like, I guess, let's see, no, I don't want to, let's create a new layer here. Um, and I'll just make it like a red here. Uh, So you see all this here, it's all going to basically be potentially be trimmed. It may not, this depends on the side of where the paper is going to be binding with the cover, where it's so some sides are going to get trimmed, some sides aren't. But you just want to be safe. Like it's just you don't want to put anything here. So you can see that for the most part, anything that I would have put here would have been this open bleed establishing shot. But I'm not putting anything of importance. I gave some space there, right? You can actually see that there's, if like you may see that some of the doors cut off in that corner there, but that's not an important part of the it's not really that important. And then that blue line that goes in a little bit further, that's like the safe area for, well, I guess I'll just mark that too. That's just like the safe area within this. It's where you're going to have like, uh, your dialogue, right? There's another blue line here that I don't know why it's there. It shouldn't be there. Okay. And then there's another, you see another set of blue lines in the middle right here.
Mhm.
Uh, that's generally like the width of the gutter. So I try to get the gutters being the space in between the panels. I try to make sure that um, I have that much space generally between each one. It's going to vary slightly. Nobody's perfect. It's fine. But I mean, you could try to be very exacting if you wanted to. Um, and you know, that's pretty much it when it comes to the layout. So what I did was I took my original uh thumbnail, I blew it up to, I'm working like a 10 by 15, but let's see, I'll actually bring up the size of this. So if you look at here, it's like 10.527 by 16. It's essentially like the proportionate size if you were to shrink it down to like a comic book size. That's proportionate. And then I have my resolution at 300. You can have it higher if you want, but I don't need to because um, I find that the quality, the color, whenever I print anything, the quality is fine. But it's up to you. Sometimes printers want higher resolution. Anyway, so then I brought that layer into my underneath this hue saturation layer, and you can see it creates an orange. It doesn't have to. I just like doing it that at that color. And I actually, if anything, I'm going to actually fade this a little bit more, so you can actually see what you're going to draw on top of it a little bit better. Now, having looked at this a little bit, and I see that the door, uh, the door on the top there, this door here, uh,
Mhm.
is very, very close to the edge. I'm thinking I'm going to skew this down. Oh, well, I'm going to skew this down a little bit because I want to make sure that the door is fully seen. Oh,
Mhm.
fully seen. There we go. So that, like we don't, if it's cut off, it may diminish the presence
Yeah,
of
the
it a little bit.
impact. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. So for the most part, I'm pretty happy. I may at this point, since I've seen, you know, like I've done my outline of my panel, I may now go back into the original thumbnail and like make sure that everything is within the space properly. So this is your opportunity to kind of get a sense of like, okay, if I need to, you know, bring up some of these, uh, just some of the images a little bit here to make sure that the art is covered here. I'm looking at this and I'm looking at that first panel there that Sarah just described to me. I'm going, okay, I think. Let me actually even go back into this a little bit more. Like it feels like everything that I need to have there
Mhm.
is working. Maybe I'll even shrink this down just a smidge. Okay. So from this point, do you want to read the rest of the page or do you want to just go? I let's read the rest of the page because I may
Sure.
jump around. I
No
may jump
problem.
around.
Let's read the rest of the page. I also wanted to mention that I thought what you were bringing up was a really good point about the technical aspects, because now that's what we're getting into. At the beginning, it was a little bit more like, let's feel the feels and try things out and see how it moves. And now it's like we have to make sure that all of those are actually going to be printable and inside the margins and all those types of things. Because if you go outside, like, the title safe area, you can end up with big trouble. So it's important to now start to really look at the logistics of making this work. Okay, so for panel 2, this is where Sam says, huh. We have a close up of Sam looking at the door and it's over the shoulder so we see the door. And then in panel 3, Sam says, locked. This is an action shot, an angle where it looks like they're yanking on the door to no avail. Panel 4, Sam at a medium close up of a confused look on the phone. We have the hi, quick question. There's a locked door in my unit. I don't have a key. And then the landlord, out of frame, says, what door? And then panel 5, medium close up similar to panel 4, and the looking perturbed and angry. No, there's, never mind. And then for panel 6, we have a medium action shot of Sam putting boxes down with their back to the door as their shadow goes onto the door. Maybe they are kind of looking a bit over their shoulder. So that's sort of the breakdown of what happens on page 1.
Okay. So while she's been going over that, I'm actually starting to get all of my reference stuff in order. Um, and so my recommendation for you in regards to like reference and stuff like that, if you've created character turnarounds or character in some kind of action, um, or you have to figure out like what something looks like from a particular time, so you have to actually go and Google it. Like start doing all that stuff here as well. Like you could have been doing that all along while you were doing the thumbnails. We haven't really talked a huge amount about reference, but I mean, we did highlight it a little bit in one of the past episodes, but I'll just talk about it again here. So what I've done with, I'll actually bring up one of the things I've done. So this is something I'd done a while back. Um, Now, one of the things about like character creation, world building, and all this stuff. Um, I find that like, especially when I'm in more into the like process, like the more fine detail type thing, a lot of times I may make little tweaks on the character. So let's say you've excuse me, you've created this character Sam, you've seen me draw the character, and then in the middle of like all of our conversations, we some little new detail has come out about Sam. Well, why you want to keep yourself open to the evolution of a character. So I find that sometimes the original character designs change by the time, like the character changes by the time you
Mhm.
actually start to draw it, because you start to realize that like, oh, you know what? I want to, maybe Sam, has like a particular, like let's say they like go like this. We hadn't figured that out until
Mhm.
after. I never drew anything like that. And then all of a sudden I draw that and I go, oh wow, like Sam's ears. I haven't quite figured out like there's like maybe there's like a bite mark from a dog that we discovered
Mhm.
later on. So now all of a sudden you go like this and there's like a part of the ear that's been cut out. And so we're like, oh, I never drew that initially because we didn't really, that wasn't something that we had talked about, and now we have, and now all of a sudden I have to like incorporate that into the design, which I hadn't done before. In any case, what I'm trying to say is it's a lot of this is like a guideline, and at least for me, I find that, it does end up changing a bit as I go.